Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and today's challenge, I decided to use something that I hardly ever see someone use, and that is the XM25 Dart. I don't think I've ever died to this contraption in Battlefield 4, ever. Like, throughout the 300 hours that I've played in this game, I don't think I've ever died to the Dart version of the XM25. Plenty of the airburst, I've seen plenty of people use the smoke, but never the Dart. And so going into this, I thought it was going to be awful. I figured that since I've never died to it, it must mean that it's terrible. No one wants to use it because it doesn't add anything to the support class. And while I still don't think it adds a whole lot to the class in general because they're using light machine guns normally, it is surprisingly powerful. I did go online to try and figure out what the stats on this bad boy was. I tried to figure out its rate of fire, its reload speed, and its damage. But everywhere I looked, it was to no avail. Like, everyone online has absolutely no idea what the stats on this weapon are. And if you guys know, let me know down below in the comments section, because I looked everywhere. I tried out the Battlefield forums, I tried simthic.com, pretty much everywhere. No one had any clue as to what the actual stats on this thing were. And so the only real thing that I can give you that's concrete about the XM25 Dart is that it holds 5 rounds in its magazine, and we compare that to pretty much all the semi-automatic shotguns in the game. I should also mention that this is a semi-automatic weapon. It does have a fairly high rate of fire. That is on the low end, but admittedly, that's okay because this is not meant to be a primary weapon. Like, the shotguns are a primary, and so you would assume that they would have an advantage over a gadget for the support class. And so while yes, it is on the low end, it didn't actually hamper its performance all that much. Sure, you couldn't kill, 10 people in a row without having to reload. Like, that is not an option with this weapon. But at the same time, it still has an incredible amount of killing potential. And even though that this is a gadget for the support class, I don't know if it was because I was going against players that had no idea what they were doing. I don't know if it was because I was getting lucky, but I was getting on top of the scoreboard repeatedly just using a gadget. That doesn't happen to me very often in Battlefield 4. Actually, I think this is probably the first time I've been on top of the scoreboard consistently with a gadget in the game at all. Like, it's not a primary weapon, and so you wouldn't assume that it would be able to outmatch people that are using primary weapons. But apparently, for the couple of rounds that I was just running around with this gadget by itself, I was somehow able to manage to get on top of the scoreboard consistently, and that was something that I did not expect. And what it really comes down to is that the XM25 Dart has an incredible amount of firepower. Like, when someone rounds the corner, there were a lot of moments when I had my crosshairs up and just one shot with the Dart, and I was able to take them out instantaneously. And while I don't know the exact stats of all of the pellets or how much each pellet does against your target, what I do know is that if someone rounded the corner and I got a nice center of shot mass on them, I had a pretty good chance of taking them out instantaneously. And while, for the most part, I did try to get 2 rounds down range, it got to the point where I knew that I was going to be able to take out a target in just 2 shots within 10 meters. Like, they round the corner, I put 2 shots into them, another guy rounds the corner, I put another 2 shots into them, and I know, like, in my mind, I know that they were going to die. And that was awesome. Like, having that consistency for a weapon, it doesn't happen very often in Battlefield 4, especially for the gadgets. And so to have that type of consistency with the XM25 Dart was very nice. And then to complement that, it also had a blazing fast rounds per minute. I don't know what it compares to all the other semi-automatic weapons, but it felt comparable. Like, if someone was just off in the distance and you wanted to get plenty of rounds down range, while you only had 5 rounds to work with, as long as you were accurate with all of your shots and as long as you had a decent trigger finger, you were going to be able to take them out very quickly. You had that high damage model, you had a very fast rounds per minute, and as long as you were able to work around the 5 rounds, you had no problem pretty much taking out any single type of target that was within maybe 15 to 20 meters. A downside of it, though, is that it does have a fairly lengthy reload time. Its short animation isn't going to be all that bad as long as you still have a bolt in the chamber, but when you switch on over to the long animation, it feels like an eternity. And that actually happens a lot. Because you only have 5 rounds in the magazine, there were a lot of scenarios where I went through all 5 rounds to try to dispose of someone, and then I would be left with my pants down trying to go through this very long animation, and then another enemy would round the corner, and then I would have to either just try and hope and pray that they wouldn't be able to kill me through the long animation, or be an intelligent player and switch on over to my primary, which sounds ridiculous, or switch on over to my secondary to try and quickly dispose of them. And so that was one thing that was a pretty large drawback of this nifty little gadget. One thing that I did quickly discover, though, was the hipfire accuracy on this bad boy isn't the greatest. I initially started using this like a normal shotgun. I assumed that I was going to be able to run around and hipfire people down. Like when you think of a shotgun, you assume that you're going to be hipfiring. But I didn't have a whole lot of success with that, and I'm also assuming that's one of the main reasons why people don't use the XM25 Dart is because their initial reaction is to hipfire with it, and its hipfire killing potential, while it's still decent, you're still going to be able to do reasonably well with it. And maybe it's just because I have no idea how to hipfire in this game, but I noticed that I wasn't having a whole lot of success with it. But as soon as I started to aim down sight, it was like a night and day difference. And I don't want to use it as a pun because this is a infrared night vision scope. But once I started to use the Iron V and aim down sight, I was dropping people left and right. The cone of fire seemed to be severely decreased. I was able to snipe people at like 15 to 20 meters away in like 2 to 3 bullets, no problem. And I was just dominating everyone I came across. And so I highly recommend, if you want to try out the Dart, which you should because it is a lot of fun to use, don't even bother trying to hipfire people down. I know it takes a different type of mentality. I know that you're using a shotgun, but at least for me, and maybe it could just be for me, and I have no idea how to hipfire people down, but I was having a lot of success when I was aiming down sight. Another thing I had to rely pretty heavily on was the ammo bag with this setup. Normally it wouldn't be a problem because you're not going to run around with this as a primary, but because it only comes standard with I think around 20 rounds, and so there were a lot of moments when if I did not use my ammo bag, I was completely out of ammunition, and so I basically just had to be dropping bags all over the place, which was fantastic for my teammates. I'm sure they loved it, but I'm glad that it actually forced me to do so because it's something that I need to work on, and I think a lot of people need to work on this. One thing you have probably experienced so far in Battlefield is that support players seem to never want to drop their ammo bags. It's one of their gadgets. Most players run with it standard, but they only usually drop it when they're running low on ammo, and that's usually going to take them a long time because they have so many rounds in their magazine, and so they hardly ever need to drop it. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is think of it more as a med pack. When I'm playing as a medic, I'm tossing med bags all over the place. It doesn't even matter if I'm at 100% health. If I round the corner and I know that I'm going to be sitting there for a second, I'll just drop a bag at my feet and then peek around. That's just how I play as a medic. And I've been really just trying to infuse that type of mentality into my support class, just so I'm forcing myself to drop bags more often. And while, sure, there may not be a guy right next to me at this instant, but I know that someone eventually is going to come across my ammo bag, and I'm sure once people realize that these bags are being placed on the ground, they're going to look for them. And just to have more bags on the ground is a good thing. Even if they're not next to you, even if, they're 1,000 meters away and they're not going to get it instantaneously, it's just good to get in the mentality of dropping these as often as you can. And so if you are like me and have the problem of not knowing or realizing that people are screaming at you for ammo, you don't see the notifications, just get in the mentality of thinking it and playing it more as if you're as a medic. Dropping your med packs everywhere, every single time you get hit by damage, drop a bag, but instead of this time, it's going to be an ammo pack. All that being said though, I don't actually know if I would ever use the XM25 Dart in a normal setup, because while I'm having a lot of fun with it right now, like using it as a primary is an absolute blast, but using the Dart with a normal loadout seems a little redundant. Like if you're using, let's say, the AWS or the MG4, one of the high rate of fire light machine guns, you have not only a high rate of fire to quickly take people out that are up close, but you also have a lot of rounds in your magazine. And one of the things about using a secondary shotgun or using one of these nifty little gadgets is that it's something that you can fall back on. So if you completely run out of ammunition with your primary and your secondary, you have the option to switch on over to this gadget and continue on with your kill streak so that you're not left with your pants down. But that usually doesn't happen with a light machine gun. Like, you have a lot of rounds to work with, and if you're ever in a scenario where you do need to reload, you probably disposed of everyone around you and you're going to be in a safe spot to go through the animation. And while I guess you could make the argument that if you use it tactically, and let's say you know that you're about to get into some close encounter combat scenarios, you can then switch on over to the Dart. But honestly, if you're using the AWS or the MG4, you have a high rate of fire weapon that's probably going to take them out just as quickly, and you have a lot more room for air because you just have an absurd amount of rounds to back you up. And so, personally, I just can't see myself using the XM25 Dart in any normal combat scenario. I would much rather just use the airburst function of it. It allows me to take out those pesky snipers that are on top of buildings. I can finish off someone that just rounded the corner who's trying to, you know, maybe camp on a med bag. It just seems like the airburst function of it is way more versatile. But overall, I highly recommend that you give it a try. I know that you wouldn't want to use this in a normal loadout setup, but if you haven't tried out the XM25 Dart, give it a go. Like, it is a lot of fun. And when you take out all these people, I noticed in the comment section, like, everyone was accusing me of being an XM25 noob. They were saying, you know, airburst scrub, what are you doing? And it was amusing because I don't think that they realized that I was actually taking them out with the dart function, and I think they just assumed that I was being an XM25 noob and just trying to spam this down range. And so if you haven't tried it out, I highly recommend it. Make sure that you're aiming down sight, use the infrared night vision scope to your advantage, and trust me, you are going to have a lot of fun. But that's about it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. But let me know what you think of the XM25 Dart. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's as versatile or not as versatile as I think it is? Let me know down below. But until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.